Hello, this is Douglas, and I'm going to be talking about power. The most common way people give up their power is thinking that they don't have any. This is said by Alice Walker, but I think there's a second way that people give up their power. They think power belongs to the wealthy, the powerful, the physically imposing, just in the charismatic. I don't think that's exactly true. Today, I want to show you something different. Something that I created, a map of human power that might not be all of it, but at least some of it, in 44 distinct forms of it, and a framework that can turn any type of power into something that you could actually use. Before I talk about anything about strategy, I think we need to talk about something deeper, something more integral that needs to be done. And I suggest that that is always starting with character. And like my other videos suggest, learning what you want to become. It's because with power, without character, almost always collapses. Most people try to build external success, careers, relationships, influence while their internal worlds are almost always not good in a way. And these are to protect their insecurities so then they don't have to face them, to avoid them actually. And character is just more so focusing on being the person capable of sustaining these outcomes. But your character is not exactly what you believe. The character is about the accumulated weight of your actions. Every time you choose a different action that builds you, instead of the easy action that weakens you, you change yourself. You create internal stability. You become someone who can act rather than react. The weak are not those who lack resources, but the ones who remain passive, drifting through life, entirely shaped by their circumstances. The strong develop agency, they develop capacity to save the environment, and capacity is what we call power. Most think power looks like just authority or money, but in reality, power is always multidimensional. It exists in your presence, your relationships, your emotional control, your ability to focus, your narrative, even the way people perceive your silence. When you begin mapping these dimensions, something interesting appears. Everyone around you already has power. That is something that is shown so much. Like everybody has power. It's about how they use it. People most times like to think that they have less power than others, but it just comes in different forms. And most people don't recognize the forms that they possess. And that's where my framework of ideas come in, where there's three pathways. Pathway A is just honestly leaning in. Use projection people already placed on you, like stereotypes and stuff like that. And honestly, you just kind of lean in with that type of stuff. And subvert, you break the expectation so dramatically that the surprise itself creates authority. So let's say somebody does something that creates a character that is just crazy. Like you're like, what the heck? Like I wouldn't expect this from somebody like that. Let's say somebody has let's say they have a messy appearance, yet you see everything inside their life is so just organized. Next thing you know, you'll be looking at them and like creates intrigue and also creates some sense of authority of like that person is some way powerful. And um I think this is one thing that like kind of happens whenever somebody Everyone underestimated suddenly speaks with complete clarity. Like they say it with no other, like with no like just always more sort of, because it's easier to kind of hold these people to different expectations. And whenever they break that, they already create power and authority in the unconscious eye. Another way to do it is just transcend it. You operate at a level so high that the trait stops mattering. Your impact becomes a story. Like nobody measures influence in inches. Your presence becomes larger than the original label. So let's say it's a person like they have like let's say they have like a crooked nose or they look like to people ugly. It doesn't really matter if they have all the power. They transcended that label. Now they're just a powerful person and they don't need to care about that. So the three things I said was lean in, subvert, and transcend. Those are three ways that you can take expectations and stereotypes and create them as more so a powerful thing that comes off to other people. A simple example, really, that I always like to use is David and Goliath. Even though I may not be super religious, I think that I really like this story because it shows how Goliath leaned into his size, his physicality, and David subverted his size. They both used a sense of their size as power. Goliath always leaned into it, so next thing you know, he uses like his overwhelming physicality to defeat other people. But David subverted his size, and he subverted it by looking less into what the heck that is. Like it's like he instead was like, okay, you know what? I might not have the size and stuff like that, but I could also just subvert this entirely in a different way, and just break the expectations so much that the surprise itself creates authority. That's why there's a lot of people like, whoa, this kid just beat this other person. Wow. Even though that person is supposed to win, mostly because like of just expectation. By beating expectation, you create authority. Um, but the transcendent move would be creating a battlefield where the sides don't matter at all. Like if we're talking about David and Goliath, all three doors exist. The skill is choosing the right one. And the example of David using what's it called? Transcendental ways and manners of going about it is by realizing and be like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna direct a force to go do this, direct a force to do that. Like he doesn't actually do anything in a way. It's less of confrontational with the two things with him and Goliath. Instead, he has these other forces that work for him. He's so more powerful than even just Goliath that his size doesn't even matter. And how to choose in real time. I would say name the projection and what does the room believe before you speak. Too young, too aggressive, too quiet. Be honest about that. Always. Ask whether the projection helps or blocks your goal. This is a big one because if it helps, most times you have one thing you can do, and that's lean in. That's the easiest thing ever. But if it doesn't help, you gotta do two things. Or you have two ways of going about it. You either support it or transcend it, honestly. And stack forms of power. Like power compounds, and you just can like stack it up. Just keep on going. Because there's so many different types of it. I would just want to go through all like forms of power real quick before it hits 10 minutes, but I just want to say the categories that they go into, and I made a whole entire document about this, so you can see each type of form of it. I'll go through the categories, but that's all the time I have for. But category one is appearance and physical powers. Perceived weakness as power. Underestimation is always a great thing to have, because you can always just do more with that in a way that people do not understand or want to see. And then personality, of course, and social powers. This is like a number one. And structural powers that most people don't really have that much access to, but it always helps. And the visible psychological powers. And like if you don't really understand what I mean by that, it's like symbolism, scarcity, forgiveness, absence, shame, vision. These influence people without them even realizing it at all. And This classic social power that we always think about is reward power, coercive power, export power, and legitimate authority. And meta power is just attention, humor, information, symmetry, and composure. The real work, though, that I want to leave off with, because I just went through and babbled about a whole different types of things, is the real power begins with discipline, begins with emotional control, begins with psychological focus. It's more about building the character than anything. When I first talked about this, I was talking about building the character, building the person. And I think that this is such a thing that people need to focus more so on than anything else. Building a character is exactly how you get to where you want to go. I think you can't really use sexual like powers to help you. It's more so those are even like later in the thing. Those just transcend. So I think whenever you have things that and like expectations that you feel are dragging you down, always remember that you can subvert them at every time. And subverting them gives you more power than you would ever get if you leaned into a power that you already had. And honestly, the strong build themselves first before using all these other stuff. Power is not something a few people possess. It's a landscape. Every human being already occupies a position in that landscape. Strong in some dimensions, weak in others. People are just blind to most of it. Your task is always to map your position honestly. Develop your character, stack your strengths, and in every room you enter, deliberately choose the pathway that nobody expects if you want to subvert their attention and subvert it to even gain more power. Remember, the most common way people give their power up is by thinking that they don't have any. And I want to say that again, because that's what I want to end off on. Because I think it's a thing that you may want to look into a lot. The most common way people give up their power is by thinking they don't have any. And the second most common way is believing that there's only one route and that it's only one pathway. It's a landscape. You can climb, you can bike, you can drive, you could walk, you could fly. There are so many things and so many ways to traverse this landscape. And that's all I wanted to kind of say. I did a lot of research on this. On the description, I'm going to have a document of like all 44 and everything as well. Thank you for listening.